Hello everybody and welcome back to another review of IMDb's top 50 greatest films of all time. And sorry that there, oh my, Booker DeWitt falling over here. Hold on, let's put him back there. There was no video on Tuesday, but there was a video on Sunday, as you noted, because a lot of you watched it, and thank you for doing that. That's good, that's what I want. I want people watching these. So, that's good, and I actually was afraid I wasn't going to be able to record this today, because it just stormed a ridiculous amount outside, and now it's sunny and wonderful, so, you know, that's something that happened. So, what movie are we talking about today? Today we are talking about Leon, or The Professional, or Leon the Professional. It depends on which version of the film you're viewing, is what I believe. If anyone knows the cause for the discrepancy in titles, please comment below. But it was released in 1994, is directed by Luc Besson, and it stars Jean Reno, Natalie Portman, and Gary Oldman. So the story is Matilda, who is played by Portman in her first role in a feature film. She was 13 at the time this film was made. She is the abused child in a family of 5. The father gets in trouble with Stansfield, who is played by Gary Oldman, in a pretty solid performance, I must say, which results in the murder of her entire family. Leon is a very skilled hitman, and also their neighbor. He reluctantly takes Matilda in after, you know, her whole family is gunned down in front of her. So, that's the movie, and things happen from there. And this was my second viewing of this film. As with many of the films that I'm talking about now, it is me reviewing them after watching them a second time, because I watched a bunch of these movies last year, and then I stopped making videos for a while, and now I'm coming back and I've kind of forgotten everything. Like when I watched this film for the first time, I was sick, so I rewatched it. The next review, which will be Once Upon a Time in the West, I'm going to have to rewatch that, all 3 hours of it. Looking forward to talking about that movie. So, let's talk about Leon the Professional. First thing I want to talk about are the performances as well as the ensemble cast. Natalie Portman, Jean Reno, and Gary Oldman are all very talented actors. They've all done great stuff in various films. Gary Oldman was fantastic in the Dark Knight trilogy, and I know he's had a bunch of other roles that were, you know, before I was born. He was in Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, where he's supposed to give a fantastic performance. I can't speak for myself out of that. Natalie Portman, we know, became a very talented actress following the fiasco that was the Star Wars prequels. She was fantastic in V for Vendetta. She won an Oscar for Black Swan. So she's gone on to great things, and I hope that she continues making movies because I think she's very talented. Jean Reno is kind of interesting. He is a French actor, and I'm actually not familiar with any of his work other than this and the 1998 Godzilla with Matthew Broderick, which for the most part is unwatchably bad. It's a terrible movie, and he was in that, and that's what I knew him from, is I saw him on the poster of The Professional, and I was like, hey, he was the guy in the 1998 Godzilla film. But, you know, I'd always heard great things about The Professional, so I went ahead, I watched it, and I really enjoyed it the first time I saw it. Now, Tuesday night, which is when I watched this, I was kind of disappointed, honestly. Maybe it was my expectations were higher because I enjoyed it in my first viewing, or maybe it's all of the critical acclaim that the film has, you know, accumulated over the years. I wasn't a huge fan, and I'll explain why. It's for reasons that don't really apply to other films. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the good stuff first. The performances are all very well done. As I said, Gary Oldman, very good, very intimidating. I think that's the perfect word to describe his performance. And his character, he's intimidating, he's in your face, he's very calm and collected, but you know that he wants to kill you. So that is something that made his character interesting, and it was fun to watch him play out on screen. Natalie Portman shows huge promise as a young actress in this film, and as I just said, that proved to be true. She does a great job portraying this, you know, tormented young girl who's kind of misguided, maybe doesn't know what to do with her life, but she's forced to make important decisions. That is another good thing. Reno does a good job. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. That is a really American pronunciation of your name. As I said, he's French. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. I saw The Untouchables once. I apologize. He does a good job as Leon. And I think that he's probably my favorite part of this movie, just because his character is really the one carrying the whole plot of the film. It is named after him. Leon is the professional. He is, as I said before, a hitman. He kills people for a living, and he's very good at that, which leads me to my next point. The direction, especially in the opening scene, is very, 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 very good. It does this cool dynamic with the way that they're filming it. Leon is infiltrating this room full of guys, this penthouse apartment, and he's there to send a message, and he's killing guys left and right, but it's all done off screen. So whenever Leon is doing something, it's very calm, the camera angle is focused, very smooth. Then you see these people frantically running through hallways, covering doors, stairways, windows. It's handheld shaky cam to show these guys are really nervous, and I think that Luc Besson did a good job directing the film in that way, in using the camera work and the style of direction to illustrate the feelings of the different characters at that given moment. I think that was very well done, and there are also some really cool perspective shots, like one looking up or looking down one of those huge spirally staircases, again in the introduction to the film. It's very good. He does a great job at building suspense in the action scenes, and when things do go down, when people are shooting and killing each other, all that crazy stuff is happening, and that crazy stuff does happen. It's very well directed, it's in your face, but it's not, Introduction to Saving Private Ryan in your face. It's more controlled than that, but it is a violent film, and the violence is directed well enough that it's watchable. It's not incredibly disturbing to watch or anything like that, like other films that I have discussed in the past and will discuss in the future. So the characters, I've kind of talked about this already. Leon is a very calm, collected, he kills people for a living, that's what he does, and he's kind of had to detach himself emotionally from other people in order to do that effectively. So Jean Reno does a great job playing that out, and I think he gives one of the most commendable performances in this film. Gary Oldman also does a great job. He is an addict to I believe it's an amphetamine pill, and when he takes that he kind of goes crazy, he goes off on people, and he listens to classical music, which kind of a movie villain trope, they get really into their classical music, and killing people to music is what he does. That works because Oldman does such a good job. Now, my problem with the characters and their personalities actually arises with Matilda. Natalie Portman does a very good job, and she's very convincing, but I frankly felt the character was uncomfortable to watch on screen, because she acts very mature, but she does so in an immature way. And there's this bizarre sexual undercurrent between the characters of Matilda and Leon for, I don't know, maybe the middle half hour or 45 minutes of this film. And there were certain scenes where I just didn't really feel like watching them. It wasn't overt, in-your-face, explicit sexuality in the film, and it handles it in a very subdued way, but it's definitely present, and especially upon a second viewing, you notice that, and it's hard to focus on anything else when you're like, did she just say what I think she said, or why did she say that? Matilda says some things that I don't see why she would have said them. I'm not sure if they were supposed to be funny, but they frankly just made it feel awkward, and I didn't really like it. So, now, this film, I felt it was much more unrealistic than the first time I watched it. The first time, I felt it was relatively grounded, and I enjoyed it overall. The second time, it was the whole premise of the film feels like a comic book. And that's not a bad thing. I like comics and all, but it's not a movie that takes place in our reality, if that makes sense. This sounds really weird, I know, and I don't really know how to put it, but there was just something off about how Leon is at first, like, no, I'm not gonna take you in, I kill people, I'm not gonna let you learn to do that, and you're gonna grow up and you're gonna be a nice girl, and then, you know, the next scene is sniper rifle practice. It just didn't really feel right. I didn't like that. But, you know, whatever. There is other stuff that makes this film good. It doesn't bog down the whole thing, and it's certainly not a bad film. It is quite good, actually. But that's my opinion. It's kind of been a very meh review, and I'm sorry that this isn't as clear as I'd like it to be. It's still a good film. Let's see what Leonard has to say about it. He has it listed in here as The Professional, and he gives it 2 out of 4 stars. A hitman allies with alienated young girl, Portman in her film debut, and together they battle thugs and cops in New York City. Well-directed U.S. debut for Frenchman Besson suffers from overly familiar artificial situations and bizarre scenery-chewing performance from Oldman. This was released in France in 1996 as Lyon version integral with 26 minutes of additional footage. That version is also on DVD. I actually didn't know that. So there is a French extended edition of this film that runs about 26 minutes longer. And this is about an hour 50-minute film, so that's a substantial amount of time. I don't necessarily agree with what he said about Oldman's performance, but I can see where he's coming from, and I'm surprised that he didn't mention some of the awkwardness that is very clearly prevalent, especially in one scene between Matilda and Leon. I'm not going to spoil it here, but there is one scene where I watched it and just said, why was that there? I don't really understand that. So, in the end, is Leon a good film? Is The Professional worth watching? Yes, it is worth watching, because I feel like this is something you really need to make up your own mind about. And I feel like I've been way too harsh on this film. I don't mean to be that harsh. I think that it is good, and it's very competently directed and performed, but I think that the script, in some situations, is lacking. Like Malton said, it is very familiar in certain situations. Like, there is a big shootout at one point that feels like it could fit in any movie. In fact, thinking about it now, it kind of reminds me of the first Die Hard. I don't know why that is, but it just does, the way that certain shots were put together. Die Hard, now that's what I'm thinking about. And is it deserving of its placement? I'd say top 250 material, absolutely. Top 50 material, that's arguable, to be perfectly honest. I have definitely seen better films. I've definitely seen better films that are lower. I think that if you were going to put this in the top 50, I would put it between 40 and 50, and not necessarily between 30 and 20, which is where we are now. We're more than halfway there, guys. It only took a year. But I think it's listed a bit too high, and I think that there are great arguments on both sides regarding the quality of this film. Check it out for yourself and tell me what you think. That's all for now. As I said earlier, next week we will be discussing Life is Beautiful. Man, I'm still thinking about that movie. Next week we will be discussing Once Upon a Time in the West from, I believe it was 1968. If you haven't seen that, check it out. Or watch my review. Tell me what you think. Check it out. Whatever you think, comment below. I want to know your thoughts on the film and what I'm doing here, so look forward to that next week. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Alright, I've killed Sauron and Booker DeWitt, so that's good. Hey, we made well. It wasn't 20 minutes this time.